Like
what?
that guy trafficking weapons last week who listed his home address. It's like, dude, what?
I know.
And
We have a
it's just not
sweatshirt
working.
that's coming out with that very thing. A little good initiative, bad judgment. That's what this.
Yeah.
He thought that the good initiative was making money. It was not. It was very bad judgment. And stop putting your damn home address on there. What are we doing?
I was in the kitchen the other day showing Cash how I was marching, like military marching, and he was trying to copy me, and he looked like one of those Iraqi videos where
they like, where their arms are going the same way as their legs?
I was like, loser,
Get in
figure it
step
out.
there,
Fucking
fucking
figure it out.
nasty,
No.
fucking.
Yeah.
Hey there, curly hair, come here.
Hey there,
Out of regs.
Hey there, Curly Q.
Hey there,
Out of
fucking
regs.
you with the curly hair. Come here. Get on the quarterdeck. We have 4 rounds in the magazine today. Round number 1. Another pilot was caught doing some light treason, Michael. We're going to have a safety stand down for these pilots because the British are doing it. We're doing it. The Australians are doing it. Read the news, fellas. Or ladies. I don't know who else is doing it.
Thank you, ladies.
Yeah.
Are doing treason
Ladies
as well.
can,
Thanks
they
very
can
much.
be traitors too. You're exactly right, Kate.
Thank
You
you.
are exactly right. Round number 2. 3 soldiers saved around 30 people from sure death last week at an incident in what happened in South Korea. That was a tragedy. We're going to talk a little bit about that, of some American service members stepping up in that moment. Round number 3, it's time to update the old safety brief. We got people out here licking poisonous toads. And a first double round. There was a child who killed a cobra with his fucking teeth. Incredible.
Yeah.
And all that.
Kids' teeth are sharp.
Yeah.
Learn that the hard way.
Wait till
Very
you
sharp
hear the
little teeth.
details of this kid. 8 years old and just like fearless.
Got that dog in him.
He's got that
I
dog in him
promise
for
you
sure.
too. We could do round 3 20 million times, talk about the dangers of licking toads at the National Park Service, and I promise you, if one hops into the middle of a smoke pit on a Friday night,
somebody's licking that.
everybody's licking that toad.
They're
It
giving a
doesn't matter.
little lickety split, probably getting peed on and all that stuff. In the article, they talk about smoking frogs, so you'll have to stick around to hear that. And today's episode is brought to you by. For some reason, my friends, the haters are furious when you say things like, "It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go. Take a look at the life you lead and some other little things and have some WhistlePig." If you haven't tried WhistlePig yet, you should. It's delicious. Winter is coming, my friend. Not necessarily on Game of Thrones, but winter is coming. So that means that you need to have a little liquid blanket when it's going to be 30 degrees like it is next week in New York City. And that's the reason why you need to have Piggyback's 100% rye and their 100% proof bourbon. It is both fantastic. The 100% proof bourbon stands taller than the rest. It's a little bit sweeter, while the rye is a little bit more spicy. I'm more of a rye guy. My wife likes the bourbon more, so we both hang out with a nice little glass with 1 cube. 1 cube, everybody knows the rules. The rye is the savory side of whiskey, and the Piggyback 100% proof bourbon is the sweeter side of the whiskey. We enjoy ours in a maple cocktail. If you haven't tried their syrup yet, it is unbelievable. I made some waffles this weekend, threw a little bit of whipped cream, some strawberries, and then I had that delicious WhistlePig syrup, and it was fantastic. 100% for all for 100. Piggyback rye 100% and Piggyback 100 proof bourbon is 100% the good stuff. Get your bottles at shop.whistlepig.com or at a local retailer. Either one has it. You need to have it. Get it in your hands, you motherfuckers. All right, let's go ahead and hop into.
Wait.
Oh.
We gotta read round 4 too.
Oh, round number 4, excuse me, as you were. We also, Kate did a wonderful interview with comedian and veteran Pete Stegmeyer about his new album. Listen to this creative title, folks. Pete, because that's his first name, Pete TSD. What a good one. That's a fucking winner, folks. That's veteran-centric. That's the reason why it's on this show. Listen to round number 4 for that. All right, let's hop into round number 1. Kate, what do we got here?
This comes to us from Reuters, and funny.
Freaking
I love
Reuters,
it.
man.
Reuters.
Reuters.
And I think
Reuters.
I'm the same way with Millie and Miley. Like the general, that's just Miley being Miley to me.
Yeah, the Reuters up in Albany, right?
Tomato, tomato.
Albany.
Yeah.
Anyway, potato. From,
Jaguar.
I think it's French. I think it's pronounced outre. So this is the news source. A former U.S. military pilot arrested in Australia and facing likely extradition back to the U.S. listed the same Beijing address as a Chinese businessman jailed in the U.S. for conspiring to hack U.S. defense contractors' computers. This is one of the. I feel like every week we tell a story where we're like, didn't they think this through a little bit? Like what? that guy trafficking weapons last week who listed his home address. It's like, dude, what?
I know. And we have a sweatshirt that's coming out with that very thing. A little good initiative, bad judgment. That's what this. He thought that the good initiative was making money. It was not. It was very bad judgment. And stop putting your damn home address on there. What are we doing?
Like that's just laziness too. Use like a PO box in 2 towns over or something.
Yeah,
I get it. You're like, I just want to use my address because I don't feel like going to the post office every day.
Or get a PO box.
So this U.S. military pilot was using the same exact address, some Beijing address that some Chinese businessman that we put in has already been accused of treason. Whatever. Anyway, spying. Australian federal police arrested Daniel Edmund Duggan, age 54, former U.S. citizen, in the rural town of Orange in New South Wales.
How do you become a former citizen? Is it you have to renounce it? Like, who do you take that to?
I think you go to the Catholic Church and they annul it.
They annul it just like
they annul your.
But I wonder if this is a situation where this is one of those people, we've seen the people over the years like, oh, if such and such happens, I'm leaving the United States. Maybe this is someone who actually did that. They put their money where their mouth is and they actually left the United States because they removed, tacos on Friday at their office or something. I don't know.
Or maybe it's like The Office and it's like declaring bankruptcy where he just stood in the middle of an office. It's like, I renounce my citizenship.
Yeah,
my thinking is that this guy knew he was going to be doing a little light treasoning, light seasoning of treasoning, and he said, I'm going to denounce I'm going to get rid of my U.S. stuff so that it's harder to suck me back over there if I get in trouble for this shit. That's just tinfoil hat Katie.
At all.
No. Okay. He denies having breached any U.S. law, any Australian law, any international law, Duggan's lawyers Dennis Morales said outside a Sydney court on Friday.
Interesting that he didn't mention anything about maritime law.
Right. He
That's
could have been doing
ironclad,
this on a boat.
As a defense, just saying, no, I didn't break any laws.
Are you guilty?
He says he didn't.
No, I didn't do it.
Didn't do it. Sorry.
Acquitted.
All right, you're good.
Whatever he did, not great. He's being moved to a maximum security prison and is not seeking bail. A former military pilot told Reuters that Duggan, who became an aviation consultant after his military service, moved from Australia to Beijing in 2013 and 14 to work with a Chinese businessman called Steven.
Oh,
seems
long
legit.
time Stoolie Steven.
Just long time
that's just
Stoolie.
One
not
name.
Anymore. He's not.
I thought I had misread the articles, but no, this guy's like Madonna, Oprah, and Steven. The same.
Steven.
Yeah.
One name only.
Yeah.
Duggan's arrest came the same week Britain warned dozens of former military pilots to stop working in China. I mean, we've covered this on previous. China's paying big bucks for this info for these pilots to go over there, crack their little knowledge all over them, and they're doing it. The British pilots are like, yeah, sure, fuck it, money, which I kind of get.
Right.
I love America, but I also want that pontoon boat someday. So anyway, now Britain, the British government, on national security grounds, is coming up with new laws to stop them from doing this because they're risking transferring all their secrets from British Air Force capabilities to China. Another aviation source said Duggan went to Beijing to work with Stephen Su, also known as Su Bin in China. So now we're up to 2 names there. Su Bin was arrested in Canada on July 2014 and jailed in the U.S. 2 years later in a high-profile hacking case involving the theft of U.S. military aircraft designs by the Chinese military, in which he pleaded guilty.
And that guy, the reason why I included that guy is because that guy is currently under investigation too, and he's currently on house arrest because of what he did. So this dude moves in with another person that is accused of espionage against the United States. Just an unreal, terrible decision. That's why I told Cons, listen, we're going to have a safety stand down. I need you to act like you have just a platoon full of nothing but fighter pilots who feel like they need to go to China to get some money. Cons, the floor is yours.
Yeah, all right, everybody, listen up. I didn't think I would have to say this, but apparently we do, okay? We're going to implement the following decision tree going forward. The question
Love
is...
the decision tree.
Me too.
Love it.
Does this involve China? No? You're cleared hot. Yes? Don't do it. It's that simple. Knock it off.
Yeah, dude,
Well,
good knock it off, Cons. Unbelievable. Are kick rocks if they do it? Where are we at on the kick rock
if
situation?
They do it.
If in fact you go down that wrong side of the decision tree, I will tell you to kick rocks.
Well, that's all we need to hear. Let's move on to round number 2. What do we got there, Kick?
All right. This is a very incredibly sad story, but also goes to show really, really good people out there doing the right things. A trio of American soldiers have been saluted as heroes after reportedly saving more than 30 lives during Saturday's Halloween crush in the South Korean capital of Seoul, which left at least 156 people dead. I'm sure everybody has seen the social media clips of that happening, and it was just absolutely horrific. Jarmil Taylor, age 40, Jerome Augusta, 34, and 32-year-old Dane Bethard said they pulled people out of the stampede, allowing the injured to receive medical attention. And one of the more striking things about the clips I was watching was how many people were just standing there in places where they could have helped, but they did not. So many people just watched it happen, and thank God these guys were there to help out.
And that's a phenomenon that happens all the time. Like you see videos
bystander
of
effect.
Women getting assaulted, older men getting assaulted, and things like that, and people just have their cell phones out recording it to go on the internet. I can't imagine doing that.
Yep. South Korea's Yonhap news agency reports that the 3 men saved more than 30 lives. The crush took place after more than 100,000 people, many in costumes, crowded into Seoul's Itaewon nightlife district to celebrate Halloween. And all the clubs were closed at this point. They hadn't opened up yet for the night. So it was this like long, skinny hallway with 100,000 people in it and nowhere to go. I saw there was supposed to be crowd control officers. And there's this video out there of one crowd control officer, and you just see he's in the middle of the crowd.
There's tears in his eyes.
He's blowing his whistle. He's got tears in his eyes. No one is listening to him. People are starting to panic. They were not prepared for this. And they said this was the first time they've done it after COVID, so a lot more people came than usual because it was exciting. It was supposed to be this great thing, and they did not plan for it.
And one survivor, cop was screaming. The one that was out there that you see was screaming, "People are dying. People are dying. Stop. People are dying," over and over again.
Yeah.
And there was nothing that he could do to stop it.
No. One survivor, a man in his 20s, said he was pulled out of a narrow alleyway after fainting in the crowd. The man said he was convinced his rescuer was one of the off-duty U.S. soldiers, and they had other accounts from other people who were pulled by these guys, and a ton of people just reiterating, like confirming that it was these 3 guys, they really did do this. The man is hoping to meet his American rescuers and thank them in person, and telling Yonhap the number of casualties was decreased by their actions. Taylor told the AFP that the disaster began when everyone just fell on top of each other like dominoes. The soldier added, "There were people on top of people. It was layers of people. They didn't have enough people there to help them at once. People in the pile were panicking, which made the situation worse. There were sounds everywhere that made it impossible. Screaming people just drowned out all the sounds."
And I know is hard to, and you're kind of like, well, why didn't everybody just calm down? That's the kind of situation where everybody ramps each other up, and it's just gets worse and worse and worse. And I know it's not even an apt comparison, but the crowd size and what it looked like, if you watch that Woodstock documentary where there are scenes where it was just completely out of control, that's essentially what this looked like. It was a stampede of people moving in a direction, and it ended horribly.
I think when you talk about crowd control for 100,000 people, I think you could have the best plan in place and the most resources, and it's still very possible.
It's like
that
holding
things
back
can
a
go very
tsunami.
wrong.
You can't do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
They said, and finally the clubs start to open their doors, but like until then, like all people are trying to escape and get through these doors, and they can't. The clubs are shut. We were picking up a lot of people and taking them into the nearby clubs since they had finally opened them up. So finally the club doors open, and these 3 soldiers spring into action, just pulling people through those doors and getting them to safety. The club's floors were filled with people laid on the ground, Taylor added. Describing the soldiers' ad hoc rescue mission, Bethard said, "We helped pull people out all night. It was a long time for people stuck in there to not breathe." I would be willing to bet they saved way more than 30 people. Augusta said the casualties were disproportionately young women. There were a lot of women in the crowd who got crushed. I think because they were smaller, their diaphragms were crushed, and because they were panicking, it was made more chaotic. And I think that too, like when shit hits the fan like that, every man for himself. And if you're the smaller guy, or gal or whoever, like you just don't. You're gonna. The stronger, bigger person is just gonna trample you, and that's
survival
sad.
instincts kick in for everybody. And I don't know that anybody has nefarious intentions, but your survival instincts, and you're scared and you're surrounded on every side by other bodies and you feel trapped. You're just going to do whatever it takes to look out for yourself, and that's when bad things happen like this. It's really very sad.
Well, I mean, that stadium, I forget where, but that was just in the news, like over 100 people were crushed to death by the crowd. So hopefully this is a huge wake-up call to crowd control across the world, that this needs to be taken like super seriously.
Yeah,
it's pretty
and
crazy.
not for nothing, they're talking about smaller people here. Even you could be, 6'2", 240. If there's enough people, it doesn't matter how big and strong you are. You will eventually get taken over by a crowd.
Yeah.
Well, shout out to those soldiers. For real.
Yeah, and
That's
one more thing. What Cons said, that's the reason why I included it, because all of that chaos is going around. To be able to calm it down and think slowly and carefully about what you're going to do is a trait that I admire so much. And I think that that's a more common trait from combat veterans that you see. And I think it's one of the, I'm not saying there's benefits to go into combat, but that is a definite thing. Whenever there's chaos around you, you're able to calm your mind in a lot of different ways, and that's what they seem to do. I'm glad that those guys were there and they did exactly what was needed in that situation. We just wish that there was more people to do the same exact thing. Let's move on to round number 3, which is a lot more positive. What do we got here, Kate?
Yeah. Round number 3, as tasty as it might look, you should refrain from licking the Sonoran desert toad, according to the National Park Service. They've actually had to issue a warning about this. On Tuesday, they used Facebook to warn passers-by to use caution around the Sonoran desert toad, known as the Colorado River toad. And one of my favorite Simpsons episodes is where he licks the toad, and he goes on this like magical trip, and it made me want to lick a toad at some point in my life.
Has that always
been?
I had never heard of psychedelic toads. Is that like a common knowledge?
Kind of, yeah. I think
now
so.
that you say it, I've heard it.
I've never heard it in my life, and I wish I had, because if so, I doubt.
You would have been licking toads.
Listen, I want to give a safety brief because there is some poison. But can you imagine the folks in the barracks that get their hands on some toads? I imagine toad doesn't show up on your piss test either.
Right, they're not
Probably
testing
not.
for toad. They're
Yeah,
not.
it's like sativa back in the day where they weren't tested for that, but now it's just a blunt full of nothing but toad spit.
Yeah, and this isn't like a tiny little nugget of a toad. This is a real doozer.
Oh, it's a
This
monster of a toad.
7 inches.
Oh, yeah.
Ladies. The toad's call is a distinctive low-pitched toot. Can either of you guys give me an example of that? Perfect. That's exactly it. Both very good. The toads found across the American Southwest also boast a unique feature. They have prominent parotid glands that secrete a potent toxin. There's enough that it could kill a large dog. Okay, so think of that before you lick it. Do remember it could kill a large dog. Are you bigger than a large dog?
So I
Then
imagine
go
that would
ahead.
make you pretty sick.
Yeah, they can make humans sick if they even touch the toad, especially if they put one in their mouth. Please refrain from licking, the National Park Service begs. The toad's toxins are particularly dangerous for animals, but among humans, powerful psychedelic if you smoke it. Okay?
And that's where
Euphoria.
my mind was completely blown. Look, we're talking about smoking fucking toads?
Well, you're
Never
not
heard
like
of it.
putting the toad on a spoon and lighting it from
You
underneath.
don't know.
You're-
You
What do
don't
you
know.
mean?
Have you ever done it?
How else do you smoke
How
it?
else you doing it?
You get the secretions. I would imagine you squeeze it.
Oh, kinda like resin
squeeze
for
it
weed?
into a bowl. Yeah.
You just
I
have
would
toads
imagine-
in there, you're like...
Yeah, I think you squeeze it a little bit, get the secretions out, you smoke the secretions, and that will give you auditory hallucinations, which I don't think sounds that fun. I've done a little dabbling with hallucinogens in my day. I like to see fun things. That's awesome. I don't want to hear things.
No.
Yeah, no,
I don't
that would
wanna
freak
hear-
me out. I've said many times in this show, I've never done drugs because I don't like feeling that I don't have
Yeah.
control of what's going on. That's very scary for me. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to be the narc of the show and just say I've never done that.
No, auditory hallucination sounds terrible, but euphoria, it also gives a little euphoria
Little
at the
risk
same time.
versus
So
reward situation there for
you gotta
sure.
sort that one out. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, possessing the toad's poison, known as bufotenin, is illegal in California. So if you're at Camp Pendleton with a bunch of toad resin in your barracks room,
Yeah, so
get it
those
out.
Camp
Sorry.
Pendleton and Miramar and all those Coronado, you guys can't be doing it. You go over to Lejeune, buddy, you can get fucked up on some toads.
Probably. I'm sorry, just really
Absolutely.
quickly at the top, it says as tasty as it might look. I clicked on that link. Those things don't look tasty.
No,
I guess it's
I
a-
would
To
venture
each
to
their
say
own.
no toad does. But I do like
To
frog
each their
legs.
own.
Yeah, that's true. They're tasty.
No,
You don't like, well, yeah, okay, you don't
Don't
like
do
any
that.
type of non-chicken, right?
that's true.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the second part. This story, I saw it whenever it first came out from like India Times, and I was like, this is just one of those sensationalized stories that's kind of like Bat Boy and the National Enquirer when you used to see that in like the 80s and shit.
Yeah.
Well, most of you probably didn't see it, but it happened. Like, where's Bat Boy? I thought this was one. They actually investigated it and found out it was 100% true. This story is true.
Sheesh. Well, so when you hear about how sharp this kid's teeth are, think about my nipples. Because, boy, oh boy,
Christ.
that guy
Sorry,
really
I'm going
tore-
to tell you right now, Kate, I will not.
No.
Okay. Anyway,
I will not.
Eight-year-old Deepak was happily playing in the backyard of his house when he had the scare of his life. A cobra suddenly wrapped itself around his arm and sank its fangs into his flesh. Deepak was in agony from the snake bite and unable to shake the reptile off. This is the fear I have of squirrels. I don't get too close to the trees when they're on them. My son's like chasing, and I'm like, no, we're hanging back. The thought of a squirrel on me and I can't get it off, fuck that.
That's how I
Same
feel
thing.
about
Squirrels?
wild cats, too. Feral cats will fuck your ass up if they get a hold
Yeah.
of your leg, and then the next thing you know, they're all up and down your leg, scratching you to shit.
Yeah, India
just think-
thinks cobras are tough.
Squirrels, they just see all their pals flattened on the road and they just think their life is a gift every day, so they don't give a shit. So they'll come at you. They don't care.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow, potty mouth from Cons, my God.
Sorry, I had to do it.
Anyway, Deepak, this kid has the cobra wrapped around his arm. It's biting him. Survival instincts just took over. He bit the venomous snake back and managed to kill it on the spot.
I love
the
that.
snake got wrapped around my hand and bit me. I was in great pain. As the reptile didn't budge when I tried to shake it off, I bit it hard twice. It all happened in a flash. When he told his parents about the snake bite, he was rushed to a medical hospital where he was administered anti-venom and kept under observation for a day. An examination of his injury led doctors to conclude he sustained a dry bite, meaning the cobra did not release any venom. Thank God.
So he got
was
really
discharged.
lucky that apparently
Yeah.
the snake had just killed something in the area,
Uh-huh.
and that's the reason why there was no venom left in it. Otherwise, the
Oh.
kid would have died pretty much instantly because how small he was.
Interesting.
Just a crazy story. I mean, if your kid does that, like imagine in a few years, Cash is 8 years old, and he bites a cobra and kills it. I feel like he becomes the mom or dad at that point. You kill a cobra with your teeth, you're the parent now.
You're the parent now, yeah. That's totally fine. I'll switch roles immediately. Yeah, fuck that.
With the holiday parties coming up, make sure that you go and shop our ugly sweaters. We have a couple in there at the ZBT store. If you go to store.barstoolsports.com and win this holiday season, you're going to look great. Try not to fuck up the holiday season. Start with buying an ugly sweater from us. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the ugliest of them all? It's our sweater. Our sweater is the ugliest one. So go get it, please. The uglier, the better. You need to get ours. Our children are starving. Cash is starving. Cons is buying a new house. I'm poor and might have to move for the second time in a year. We need money. We need this merch bonus. Please, for the we don't ask you to buy merch all the time. All these other podcasts has a ton of merch. ZBT doesn't have a ton of merch. I understand, like, we don't have a ton of merch, but this is good. We have some other good stuff coming out, maybe even today on Veterans Day or later this week on Veterans Day. Either way, go to store.barstoolsports.com and please, please, please buy some ZBT merch.
Now for round number 4, interview with comedian Pete Stegmeyer.
Now on Zero Black 30, we are joined by comedian Pete Stegmeyer, who is coming out with his album Pete TSD on November 11th, Veterans Day. I've never heard a more perfect name for a comedy album by someone in the military. But Pete, thank you so much for joining the show.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I love this. Everyone talks about in the military, a common theme among most of us is that you have to have a certain level of humor. If you really want to get by, you really want things to go smooth, you have to have a level of humor, oftentimes kind of a dark, sick sense of humor. I listened to your album. I think it's perfect. This started for you in the military, actually.
It did, yeah.
And it was sitting around the smoke pit with your buddies kind of thing. Like, how did this all begin for you?
Yeah, so this actually, like, I'd always been, like, kind of funny. Like that was something that I always enjoyed. Like I remember like listening to like, the radio shows in the morning with my dad, and just like always liking comedy. But then like when we got to Afghanistan, I talk about this a little bit in the album, but like when we're in Kyrgyzstan, and you're getting those like briefings and things like that before you actually fly into Kandahar. They're like, Afghanistan, leads the world in like opium and heroin production, like the official language is like whatever. Like we're getting ready to like get on the plane, and all of a sudden like Dave Attell and Artie Lang like walk into the room, and like they weren't kidding about the heroin. But I feel bad saying that. He's doing better now, but
I'm sure they would laugh out loud at that if they heard it themselves. So yeah, I think you're fine.
That was my first actual thought though. But they did a show, and it just like it was just cool to see everybody like, because it was my first deployment, and everybody just kind of like laughing and having a good time. And then we get out to our COP, and there's literally nothing. Like we just kind of taken over like a shed from the ANA and ANP. And so at the end of the day, it's like I would just like tell fun stories. Like we would have like our little smoke pit and like the burn barrels, and we'd have our cigars, and I would just like try to make people laugh, and it like just became really fun, and it like people started coming to it, and like they would make requests, and so it was really cool, and it just like it helped me kind of like stay creative and like work on like my storytelling. And it also was just kind of something that like we had to look forward to, because at the time like we didn't even have like hard structures up. We were still like sleeping under like the parachutes and like the camo netting and stuff like that. So it was just nice to have like something scheduled and like something like kind of regular and normal.
So you started, and real quick, your branch and like kind of who you were with over there.
Oh yeah. So I was an infantryman in the Army. So both of my deployments were with 2-2 infantry, who were part of 3rd Brigade 1st ID. And so we did Kandahar province, and then we did Ghazni province a couple years later.
And you're so right. Like anything that makes you feel a small sense of like, even just sitting around playing a board game, like Monopoly with your friend, you kind of forget your surroundings. You kind of forget where you're at. And any small thing, like to have a comedy night, like you're back in the States going to a comedy show, feels like a luxury. You're like, wow, somebody prepared something for us, and we actually have this thing to go to, and I'm going to laugh for a second and forget where I'm at. So you actually started, like, I know people dick around and joke around in smoke pit. You actually started having like actual comedy nights.
Yeah, it was really fun, because like that was like the nice thing about our smoke pit too, is like we had like the rule where it was like if you were smoking, you didn't have to wear like your soft cap, and then you also could use people's first names. Yeah. So like like the first sergeant was
the
cool.
Tobacco companies actually came up with that. They're like, here, start doing this, and everyone's like, well, I want to smoke now. I want to do this. I don't want to take off my cover. That is so cool. So
yeah, and it was.
You were getting like requests. People started to know, like, word of mouth, and obviously that was a huge encouragement. You just kept it going. Like, what was the next? Like, how did it go from there?
Yeah, it kind of just kept going throughout that year with things like that. And then when we were getting back to the States, like we had like the layover in Germany, and then we had like the time like waiting to get on the buses and stuff like that. And that was actually really fun, because I ended up doing like 10-minute sets like in Kyrgyzstan, then in Germany, and then in the States. So it was like 3 continents in like 24 hours. But it was just like, it was fun, and it was like kind of a way for, it was also like a way like for us to kind of address the bullshit.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to swear, by the way?
Oh my God, of fucking course. Okay. Of course you can. Yeah.
Okay. And so it was kind of something like that, where you could like kind of like the jesters would be able to do like back.
You can get away with saying things that if it was a normal day in uniform and you were in like the HQ office, you could never say this, but you get away. You can say a lot more when you're being funny, when you're up on stage, than you can. And people really appreciate that. Is that kind of what
you're... And they don't feel crazy then. Like they're like, oh, it's not just me. Like everybody's laughing at this. Like, it's like, okay, like we get it.
Yeah. I wanted to go insane yesterday and like flip the fuck out and like lose my job too. Oh, good. Pete said it. We can all kind of like look around and I'm laughing too. So that was huge. So then you get back to the States, you're stationed in South Korea and you're still doing shows. Like it keeps.
Exactly. So the first time we redeployed was back to Texas. And then a couple months later, we went to Kentucky, up at Fort Knox. And from there, I started going to like open mics in like Louisville and like the comedy clubs and like really like kind of like leaning into it. And it went like that started going really well. I got passed at the Improv, so I got to host for like people that I like grew up watching on TV. And then like right as things like started going great, they're like, hey, you're redeploying again. So we went back and then
Hey,
came
you
back.
look like you're doing well. Guess what? It's time to
Exactly.
go. Yeah. Okay.
And then and then like I ended up going to Korea after that, but I was able to find like a group of people that did stand up there, like mostly like Canadian like school teachers and stuff like that. But I would just like jump on the train, like go into Seoul, do my set, and it was a lot of fun.
And side note too, like it takes like a bit of initiative. Like when I first started, I haven't done it in a long time now, but when I first wanted to do stand up here in New York City, I had just gotten out of the Marine Corps and Camp Pendleton. I got here and I was like, how does one even begin? Like a lot of people don't even know where to start. You had this super organic start that it takes a lot of initiative to kind of continue it and seek it out from there. Let alone doing your own shows overseas and in South Korea. What was the scene in South Korea like? Like, how did you even find that?
So that's actually an awesome point. And I had to get creative with a lot of that stuff because like I would do like every once in a while, like I would still do like, shows for the troops. Like we'd go to gunnery and I'd be like on the back of a Bradley doing like a half hour. And that was fun. But then, I just like, I got really lucky that Facebook was as popular as it was. Because I was able to just kind of search, South Korean comedy groups, and then because the comedy world is kind of a small ecosystem, I was able to say to a couple people, or put something out, and they're like, "Oh, try contacting, Jeff Sullivan. He kind of runs this," and so like that kind of helped as well. And then it was kind of fun because it was like, okay, I already know these people, but a lot of times it kind of did force me to get creative. And if I knew I was going to be like at gunnery for a bit, or I was going to be doing something else, like okay, well, I can't perform, but I can write a bunch of jokes and like put them out on Reddit, like on the stand-up shots, and be like, okay, like these are still like the jokes are hitting. I just have to like wait to tell them.
Yeah. And it does, like, that's great initiative, because I feel like a lot of people look at, especially when you're in, I feel like you kind of feel stuck in a bubble sometimes, and there's not much else you can do besides your job. And so I'm always impressed by people who look beyond that and are like, what else can I be doing while I'm here? Take the initiative to do that kind of thing. It's awesome. So you get back from your second tour, continue doing stand-up, and your album that's coming out, PTSD, on November 11th, it starts out light enough. You're talking about gaining weight after you get out when you're in the veteran world, Call of Duty, stuff like that. But then you talk about getting treatment for PTSD, seeking treatment. Like, was that difficult for you to open up about, and why did you take that route?
That's an awesome question. I don't know that it was difficult. Like it was, I actually, when I was in the Army, I never wanted to be like the Army comic. So I didn't, like, most of my jokes like had nothing to do with the military. Like I would do like some things, about like, leaders or whatever the situation was, but most of the stuff I was writing, I didn't want that to be a thing.
And you wanted it to be an escape for people. Like, let me just talk about some other shit like that I have going on. Right. Okay.
Exactly. And I also, like, I was worried that it wasn't going to make me like marketable to people outside of the Army that had no idea. And so I kind of avoided it until a couple of my friends were like, no, like you've got these awesome experiences that nobody else does. Like you should be talking. And once I started talking about like the military, I found that like the mental health aspect of it was part of that. And so part of me wanted to, to be able to write jokes like that.
And
Like oh, go ahead.
Well, do you mind speaking of like, what were you experiencing that made you want to write about it? As long as you're okay talking about it.
Oh yeah, of course. Like,
I did an album about it. Yeah, I can tell you that. Yes, Kate. It's
well, I, I think that a lot of it was like genuinely not understanding what PTSD was.
Mhm,
And so when I got out, like I'm very lucky because my wife is a therapist.
mhm.
And so as I was getting out and I was transitioning and going to school and things like that, like I wouldn't have known that I was depressed. Like she
Mhm.
kind of noticed at first. She's like, "Hey, you haven't showered in like 3 days." And it sounds funny, but in the army, like a lot of times you don't really recognize that because like you're used to going, sometimes 2 weeks without a shower. Like,
Especially like infantry, women, but it's like it's like dudes living together. It's like, that's not that crazy,
yeah,
It's like,
it kind of like it goes under the radar a bit,
mhm,
or it would be like, hey, you're like you're eating like crazy,
mhm.
and like that's pretty normal. But I was running 10 miles every morning, so it stayed off until I stopped running.
Yeah.
But all of these, or like sleep habits, it was like, hey, you're sleeping way more than you used to. And I'm like, I'm sleeping till 9 a.m. Like this is, but
Mhm,
comparatively, I was waking up at 5.
mhm.
And so it was a lot of these things. And then like my short-term memory loss was like really taking off. And I had no idea, like, I only thought that PTSD was like waking up in the middle of the night, having nightmares,
Right.
you
Like
know.
like something you'd see in the movie. Like it has to be some
Yeah,
extreme crazy thing that, some stereotype. But that's not
exactly.
right.
And like I do like the fireworks thing for like some people. Like my friend's dad was a Marine,
Mhm.
and he, like we found that out on 4th of July, and we tried to like sneak back into the house, and like he was like downstairs with the gun. We're like, oh, this is pretty bad.
Yeah.
But that was like I didn't know any of that because like they didn't tell us that. Like
Mhm.
when we were in, they were just like, hey, if somebody, you would get like the suicide training,
Yeah.
but you didn't really get much else. And so as I started going through therapy, like I started doing some comedy and like, army things, and people afterwards would come up and be like, hey, like I really relate to that. That's awesome. And so I started like adding like the rest of it, and like the fact that I have like depression,
Mhm.
or like that I'm going through like this kind of therapy now. And a lot of times, like I think what really made me keep doing it was people after shows like that would come up and say like, hey, like, I want to go talk to somebody now, because like
Mhm.
I didn't realize that this was happening.
Yeah. And a lot of times
And
probably weren't even in the military, right? Just wow, like your story
yeah,
made me it's not exclusive to us. It's like,
yeah, especially
people
like there's
might.
a like they were putting like field hospitals in like Central Park. Like everybody has some kind of PTSD at this point.
Mhm.
And I think being able to help people understand that, and be like, oh well, like I'm not afraid to go get help, because that was always stigmatized when we were in.
Yeah.
I think, like, yeah, it feels really good to have people say that afterwards, that it's like, like usually you don't want to hear somebody be like, hey, like I saw you do stand-up comedy, and I really think I need to talk to a therapist, like, but like for me it's a good
Yeah.
thing.
I think too, like this might be kind of exclusive to me, but and I don't do it anymore. But when I first got out, I got into doing stand-up comedy, and I was going all the time in New York City, and I talked a ton about my experience in the military. One, it's something that makes you unique. It's so hard to stand out here. It's like not many
Oh
women that are
yeah.
talking about. But two, the other thing, I so desperately, for some reason, wanted people to understand sort of what I had been through, I guess, like this unique experience. I wanted to be able to I wanted the whole room to be able to know what I had experienced a little bit. And one of the only ways I seemed to be able to do that was through jokes and through comedy. And multiple times throughout my life, like I write in the top of my notebook, like when I'm really down, when I'm having a hard time, I'll write at the top, I'll say, what is funny about this particular thing I'm going through right now? If I can find one or two things that are actually funny about it, that I can step back for a second and be like, we can laugh at this. Like, come on, we can laugh at this. Like, then like I can't quite explain it, but it always gives me these nuggets of hope to be like, if you can laugh at this, it's fucking funny. And
Oh yeah.
then life isn't, life can be tough and life can be bad, but like if you're still laughing, things are okay. Like I think there's something, I'm rambling, but there's something so powerful about that to me that I've always found with comedy. So I just love that you're doing it with everything that you've gone through and everything you're,
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you
I
for
think
listening to that. You just sat through
uh,
10 minutes of me
no, that
rambling, but
was no, it was important. That was really good. Like, because that's like the truth of it is like,
yeah.
and I think that's like one of the things that like people in the military adapt to like better than anybody
Yeah.
is like that, like that sense of humor. And like, when you're out in the field and all of a sudden like everything's gone wrong and then it starts raining, like sometimes all you can do is laugh.
Yeah. I remember one of my first years, like when I first got out, was in people like genuinely love to ask me, like, oh, did you ever kill anyone? Like that was this question that people would really ask me. And I'm like out at the bar trying to have fun. And first of all, no, I didn't. Not that I know of, but it was like I could either take this seriously and get upset about it, or like I could joke about it. And like I know that people mean well and they come from a good place and they're just trying to show interest and like, and we can laugh about it. We can like poke fun at it kind of thing. And I feel like it's really like comedy is such an empowering thing. It's so cool that have you found like, because you travel now, you go to shows, like have you made any like really powerful connections through this?
Yeah, so I've made a few, like like there's been like a lot of like awesome like comics that have come out and like talked to me about it. I used to host in New York a veteran suicide fundraising show every year, and we got Dave Attell to do it like
Awesome.
twice, which was really cool. But then also I got to do recently a show with like Wounded Warrior Project to kind of and so that's been really good. But like I think my favorite connections are just like the people that come up after the shows and things like that are like, hey, this is really cool, like this is like funny, but also like I'm not alone, thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, the feeling I always say, like, I'm like, it's fucked up, but like, I'm a huge misery loves company person. So I share a lot of and I try to do it through humor. So like, but like, here's what's going wrong. Cause I love like, it's fucked up, but I love getting the DMs of being like, lady, you're not alone. And I'm like, oh, good. Thank God. Like, like,
No, definitely.
It's sick, but it's like, it's bad.
It's
like,
validating.
You're back in the smoke pit bitching again. And they say like, around the smoke pit, what did we do the most? Probably complain. Cause it's such a unifying fucking thing. But
exactly.
So where did you end up recording your album? Like, how long have you worked on this? And like, when did you know you were ready to do it?
So I recorded this about a year ago. It was right before Veterans Day at Stand Up New York, which is like my favorite club in the city.
Yeah.
And they had basically given me a chance to headline the club for a night, and so I'm like, okay, well, this will be a great time. So I brought on like a lot of veteran comics and tried to make it a thing. But I'd been kind of working on the material like in some areas for a couple of years, because like getting like that first like 45 minutes to an hour takes so long, and then like you have like these guys that can do it every year after that, but like for a while like it's hard to get that much stuff that's like cohesive and good.
Getting like a good 5 minutes is difficult. So to get to that, yes, to get a half hour or an hour takes time. I don't think people realize like how long that takes. Yeah,
it really does. And I wanted it to be cohesive, and like I know I talk a lot about a lot of different things on the album, but I tried to make sure that there was like a through line for a lot of it. And I originally I wanted to record this because my old sergeant major is the top NCO in Korea now. And I was like, maybe I can we pulled out of Afghanistan. At first I was like, maybe I could record this, do a USO show and just, get the one record, because I would that's still a dream at some point.
Yeah.
But then it was kind of like, okay, well, Afghanistan is done. They're breaking everything down in Korea. And it was like, honestly, I think I've been doing this for a while. I'm ready. I want to start working on some new stuff. And I think I've got it to a point where I'm happy with it.
Oh, it's awesome. Comes out November 11th. Pete TSC, where can people find it?
So people can find this basically wherever you get music, Apple Music, iTunes. I believe it's going to be out on Spotify, but they get a little weird with comedy albums now. So it'll probably be on there and then get taken down. Amazon Music, but probably the best spot is Apple Music or iTunes. And if you go to I have a link tree on my Twitter, which is it's Peter
Yeah.
J, and then on my my
Just
Instagram,
at Peter J.
It's Peter J, ITSPETERJ.
It's Peter J. Okay.
And then there's also my Instagram, which is just at Pete Stegmeyer.
Mm-hmm.
I have a link tree on both of those with pre-order links, or if you just want to wait for the day to come out, like that's cool too. And yeah, it's available basically wherever you get music.
And do you have any advice for, I know, like, again, like me, when I first got, I was like, how does one, this seems like something I'd like to do. You hear so many people say, well, I want to try stand up, but it seems like, well, how the hell do you start? How do you get into this? Do you have any advice for anybody now? Because yours started real organically, but like, say I've gotten out, I'm in some city now and like, I want to do it, but how? Like, any advice?
Yeah, I mean the best thing to do is find an open mic. Maybe find a couple in your area,
Mm-hmm.
and like even if you don't want to like go up the first time, like just go check it out. Like see,
Yeah.
is it like a do you think you're gonna mesh with like the people there?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a good crowd? Do you think like what? And from there, just kind of start writing jokes and get up there and just kind of do it. Like I would say like your best bet is to like take your funniest joke and start with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because then like if you can get people to laugh that first time, like you can pull them along for the rest of your set. But you just want to like give them the cookie for early on and be like, I'm funny, just stay with me.
Yeah. That's what I think too. Like, this also might sound fucked up, but like, it seems so intimidating. And then you go to like a Monday night open mic with just every like Joe Blow, whatever. And you're like, oh, we all suck. And for, when you're first starting out, it's like, oh, we're all like, oh, it's not that intimidating. No one is here to be perfect. We're all just trying. Everyone here is failing. And that's totally fine. Like, I feel like that was one of the biggest things for me too, was like you said, just, you don't even have to go up, go sit through one. And you'd be like, oh, okay, this is not that serious. It's like, we're all just trying. It's okay to fail.
The bar is low, and it's like I'll honestly just like embrace the suck a little bit and be like, okay, this is gonna be tough. But then like it is kind of like basic training. Like you get there, it sucks at first, but then like the people that you like meet there, like you kind of build each other up, and you start like going to shows together, and they're like, hey, I do a bar show, like love to have you. And like it's a great way to like meet friends, and it's awesome. Like even if you don't like make a career out of comedy, if you're thinking about it, I would highly recommend at least give it a shot.
Because too, it's a very cool community. Especially if you kind of just gotten out recently, you're looking for a community. Even if you're not being the one doing stand-up, you can meet some really cool people and do some really cool networking just hanging out in that around those
100%.
people anyway. So I would highly recommend it. I know it's part of the reason I wound up where I did and have a career in media. So like highly recommend if you're thinking about doing it and you're out there listening, hit up Pete. Sounds like he's willing to give out some advice for you. Hit up me.
Oh, absolutely.
But most of all, check out his album. Is there anything else before we go that you want to put out there?
No, I think I just want to say thank you. This has been really fun. I'm super excited for the opportunity, and I appreciate it. I do want to point out that sales from the album, like my proceeds are going to veteran suicide prevention charities.
Awesome.
Like I've been working with Headstrong Project a lot of times. Like they helped me find a therapist for like, I think I had a therapist through them for like a couple years, and it was
they did the same for me. So fellow Headstrong alum here. So they are amazing. One of our coworkers, her relatives, she heard about it throughout, and her relative in less than 24 hours was hooked up with someone to talk to regularly. I know Headstrong is a big one that helped flip my life around too. So that's so cool. The proceeds are going to that. Pete DSD out on November 11th. Check him out.
All right. Thanks to Pete. Be sure to go check out that album.
All right, let's move on to some save rounds and alibis. You have to live somewhere, might as well own it. Unless you're more interested in paying someone else's mortgage, it's a good time to buy when you are ready to buy. CCM listens, understands, communicates throughout the entire loan process. They provide more loan options tailored to your financial capabilities. They have an innovative technology that focuses on what's important to fulfill your loan needs. They have faster closing time than the competition. They have stable monthly payments and low to no down payments. Access your equity to use for larger expenses, from debt consolidation to home renovation. And who doesn't love a little bit of swag, my friends? Because you're going to get a free Barstool and CrossCountry Mortgage sweatshirt when you sign up for the refinance or you get pre-approval. That's while supplies last, so make sure that you go out and get it. See if you qualify today. Visit ccm.com/Barstool. And legal. CrossCountry Mortgage, LLC, to NMLS 3029. All loans are subject to running. Fuck me. Hold on, let's do that. Nick, you'll have to cut it up. See if you qualify today. Visit ccm.com/Barstool. CrossCountry Mortgage, LLC, NMLS 3029. All loans are subject to underwriting approval. www.nmlsconsumeraccess.org. Nick, what do you got?
Save rounds, not much. Just want to make sure everyone goes over to YouTube and hit subscribe. Thank you.
Kate?
Nothing crazy. I saw on the USMC Reddit page. I just thought this is neat. So there's an average enlistment is about 4 years. That's 208 weeks. You have to get a haircut every week, supposedly. But I mean, some units are really strict about it.
It's very much true.
So that's 208 haircuts in 4 years. That's a lot of fucking haircuts. Haircuts that cost about, if you're giving a tip too, about $20 a pop. That's almost $3,000 worth of haircuts over the time of your enlistment. So
and it's bullshit because it's part of your uniform. Your haircut is part of your uniform. It should be covered under your taxes.
That's what this person. Well, somebody replied, you can write haircuts off in your taxes as non-compensated work expenses. Also, any grooming items, especially razors, since they're like $1,000 for a box of 6. LOL. But is that true? I wanted to ask.
Well, it's bullshit because the way that you have now, usually you don't. If you're a barracks guy, barracks lady, you don't go and get deductions based on line item deductions. You take the full deduction that's already built in. You're not going to go line item. So it really doesn't matter. Like all those different things where you can, they're not going to reach that threshold anyway. I don't think that threshold should be part of it. I think the Marine Corps or whatever branch of service you're in should pay you that kind of like an allowance, because if not, let people grow their hair out. You can't have that where you have to do something and not pay it. Same thing as a cell phone. A troop isn't required to have a cell phone ever, like because the Army doesn't pay for it.
Somebody floated the idea of giving them like a clothing allowance for haircuts, and everybody was like, no, we'll just spend that on beer. That's never going to work. But then somebody had the idea of what if on base haircut places, they just took note of how many haircuts they did that day and what type of haircut, and they got reimbursed by the government. But everything has a room for like getting fucked up or whatever. I prefer this. This one person replied, when the barber is done and goes to set his clippers down, just run away. So just keep going to different places and you get your free haircuts. But I just thought that was funny. I'd never thought about the numbers that over the course of an enlistment you could get up to 208 haircuts. Probably is a lot.
That's a lot. I bet you do razors, like all of that added up. You probably spent $5,000 of your own money to be in the military.
Oh yeah. So if they're trying to give you your enlistment bonus or your whatever, and it's like $5,000, just say.
And gel for you guys, kid. You have to buy so much gel and so many
gel. Yep.
The amount of extra socks. Cons, what about you, pal?
Two things. Had either of you ever heard what a Faraday cage is?
No.
So I learned
Is that little cage that you put like around your dick for edging?
Unfortunately, no, it's not.
Because it is No Nut November. Everyone puts their cages on. That's the thing.
True. I got mine on right now.
Yeah.
It's a enclosure used to block electromagnetic fields. But so I was on
we're way off.
Yeah.
Yeah, what?
I was, you learn something new every day. I was on the Amtrak on Friday, and I was like, wait, why does my phone never really work that well and get serviced that well? Like, I'm in areas that has cell phone service, and maybe this is admitting stupidity on my part that I couldn't figure this out on my own. But number one, obviously, everyone else is using their phone, so, a lot of people in a confined area. But then also someone explained to me, you're in like a metal tube, and that kind of acts like a Faraday cage, which just blocks the cell service, that you're moving so fast that the cell service can't keep up. So that was interesting to learn. And maybe I felt a little stupid.
Love that.
Love that. And then lastly, I was taking advantage.
What do you have, Cons? Have you guys ever heard of cell phones? These things don't work in a subway. It's fucking crazy.
It's nuts. No, but you know what? Dude, cell phones definitely work. A lot of subways in New York City now, you can get cell service for whatever, because they're all
and in every
levels.
other industrialized country in the world.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
Let's figure
they've
that
started putting wireless shits down there, you know. Whatever
And
they
all
call
that
them.
you see that new bullet train they got in Japan? My God,
I
that
heard of
thing's
it.
fucking cruising.
That's crazy. And then last thing, we have some unseasonably warm weather here, so I was playing golf yesterday.
Today was
and-
one of the best mornings. I'm gonna
No,
say
I hate it. I hate
this
it.
morning.
I hate
Fuck
it.
is wrong?
I
This
hate
morning
it.
was the top 5 morning of the year. This morning
No.
was I almost said to myself, I'm gonna call out sick and take my son to the beach today in
No.
November.
No, I think I'm gonna write a blog about it and describe why this is not good. But I don't like these warm temperatures. But I was able to take advantage and play golf yesterday, and I found out the origin of the mulligan. Did either of you know where the term mulligan came from in the game of golf? We all know
That's
what a
where you
mulligan
fuck
is.
up a shot and you're like, I'm gonna take a mulligan that doesn't count,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Correct. So I found out at this course, the locker room attendant, his last name was Mulligan. And he would go out at the end of the day with a couple of members, and they had been playing all day, and he would hit his first shot off the tee, and it'd be crappy. He'd be like, oh, that's not fair. You guys have been playing all day. Let me take another. So they just started calling that a mulligan. So the origin of mulligan for the game of golf started in New Jersey.
How many mulligans you usually give out, Cons?
You usually get a breakfast ball when I'm playing, so you'll get one. That's about it.
Yeah, I usually do first tee box. If you fuck that up, then you can try again. Because nobody wants to start there. You start the first hole bad, you're done. Anything else, Cons?
No, that's it. Thank you for indulging me.
I'll be in town this week, by the way.
Yeah, I'll be in town on Thursday, and also the ending episode that we have of this week is going to be awesome. And I just got done doing it before this show. It's David Bellavia, who is a Medal of Honor recipient, one of 2 living Medal of Honor recipients from the Iraq War. He wrote a book called Remember the Ramrods, and it's one of the most realistic books about conflict that I've read in a long time. I've always said that Generation Kill was the best Iraq book that there is because it talks about the conversation is just like the Marines, the sense of worry, the sense of fear, the sense of anxiety and boredom. All of those things were encapsulated in Generation Kill. David does it on the other end from the Army perspective and going house to house. With the Marine Corps birthday coming up November 10th, that's actually David Bellavia's birthday as well, and the anniversary of his actions that earned him the Medal of Honor. Whenever he's going through, I was blown away because in the Marine Corps birthday message, there's one battle, the Battle of Hue City. And whenever you're going through boot camp, it's one of the battles that they talk about. And you get online and you're doing your knowledge and they're screaming out different facts about you. And they say Hue City. And whenever they say Hue City, you scream back at the top of your lungs, house to house, street by street. So you know what happened there. His book, House to House, Street by Street, is exactly what happened in those old times. To give you a little bit of an indication of what you're going to hear next week, David beat somebody to death with a Kevlar. Sound the retreat.